Dünyanın Politikası programı ile karşınızdayız bugün. Bu hafta programın konusu 8 Mart ve tabii ki kadın mücadelesi ve de özellikle Uluslararası Demokratik Kadın Federasyonu olacak. Program konuklarımız federasyon üyesi 2 kadın örgütünün öncüleri olacaklar. Kendilerine hoş geldiniz diyeceğim ama hoş geldiniz demeden önce bu federasyondan biraz bahsetmek istiyorum. Uluslararası Demokratik Kadın Federasyonu 1945 yılında kuruluyor. İkinci Dünya Savaşı sonrasında. Barış ve eşitlik talepleriyle ilerici kadın örgütleri bir araya geliyorlar ve mücadelelerini birleştiriyorlar 1945'te. Paris'teki kuruluş kongrelerinde 850 delege şunları söylemişler. Bu federasyonu çocuklarımızın ve gelecek nesillerin umutlu ilerleyişinde gerekli koşulları sağlamak için kuruyoruz. Kalıcı ve evrensel barışı sağlamak için mücadelemizden vazgeçmeyeceğiz demişler. O günden itibaren de federasyonun mücadele başlıkları kalıcı barışın sağlanmasının yanı sıra eşitliği kurmak, kadına yönelik baskıların her türlüsüne son vermek, insanın insanı sömürmesine de son vermek oluyor. Federasyon dünyanın dört bir yanından onlarca kadın örgütünün emperyalist savaşlara, kapitalist barbarlığa karşı mücadelesini ve enternasyonalist dayanışmasını kendisine yol olarak belirliyor ve hala öyle devam ediyor. Türkiye'nin temsiliyeti açısından da Türkiye Yurtsever Cephe Kadın Komisyonu ile başlayan temsiliyetine günümüzde de federasyon içinde devam ediyor. Bugünün programında işte bu anlattığımız federasyonun üyesi örgütlerden 2 ülkenin temsilcilerini ağırlayacağız. Ve ülkelerinde verdikleri mücadeleyi ve özellikle 8 Mart'ı konuşacağız. Yunanistan Kadın Federasyonu'ndan Theo Dalmara ve İngiltere Ulusal Kadın Meclisi'nden Liz Payne bizimle birlikte. Onlara hoş geldiniz diyeceğim. Welcome Theo and Liz. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, if you let me, I want to start. As everyone knows, we are approaching another March 8th, and we know that it is actually we see more inequalities, but we also see more struggles during the pandemic. So today, we would like to talk about the women's struggle in your countries, especially, and the agenda of your organizations. So my first question is going to be about your organizations, actually. I know that both countries have world-changing historical struggles in terms of the working class struggles and working women's struggles. So the first thing I want to ask is that maybe considering that world-changing historical struggles in your countries, could you tell us about your organizations briefly, and since when, for example, have your organizations been active in the struggle and also in the Women's International Democratic Federation? And maybe a little bit you can tell us about today also. So how are you organizing, and is it through cities and localities, or is it through workplaces? So, Liz, do you want to start with the first question?
Yes, thank you very much, comrade. And can I thank you all very much for inviting the National Assembly of Women onto your programme. It's a great privilege to be here, and I'm bringing the greetings of the Executive Committee of the National Assembly of Women to all of you. A little bit about our organisation then. The National Assembly of Women was founded on International Women's Day 1952. So next year, and we're already planning it, we'll be celebrating our 70th anniversary as an organisation. It grew out of the International Women's Day Committee, which was working in Britain. That too, of course, was based in a history of women's struggle on the left, a very, very progressive struggle for women. And we can think of such women as Sylvia Pankhurst, for example, and her work in getting suffrage for women, vote for women, in 1928. So we were active during the Second World War as an International Women's Day Committee, and we sent a delegation from Britain to the first meeting of the Women's International Democratic Federation in 1945, and have been working with it ever since. We think that it's a fantastic organisation, and actually all our work, in a sense, is rooted in that international context. So the founding meeting in 1952, it had 1,400 women from all over Britain, and they met in London that day. And issued a declaration, basically, which said what the basis of the struggle would be. It laid that foundation for the struggle. We said that peace is essential. Peaceful settlement of rather than aggressive and conflict settlements of issues, and an end to the arms race. We said that without peace, there can be no equality and justice for women, for families, for men, for in a context in which there can be a fight for socialism. And we also said in 1952 that no country can make the most of its resources without giving women equal opportunities to take part in every aspect of life, the economic, the political, the social, and the cultural. So the rights of women, women's voices, that was another pillar of the National Assembly of Women. And also fighting for the future of our children, for opportunities for children, for education, for health, and every aspect of a child's life that would make for a healthy adult, healthy, productive adult. And of course, all of this struggle, it is based not in aggression to men, but of course it is based in the class struggle. We understand that it is the system that we must change, although of course we must challenge men in their behaviours and so on, but it is not an anti-men struggle. It is a working class struggle to bring half the working class into that struggle and into organising for the future. Very briefly on how we organise now. We have an executive committee of which I'm a member, and we have a number of vice presidents who are, I was going to describe them as ceremonial, but I don't want you to misunderstand that word. When I say ceremonial, they are representatives, they are ambassadors, they are women who've been involved in the struggle perhaps for decades. One of our, I won't go through them all, but one of our vice presidents is the current General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress in Britain. Another is a former MP who fought for women, a left-wing MP who fought for women all her life. So we have a number of representatives and ambassadors. We publish a magazine called Sisters, which I'm just going to hold up. There we are. You can see that it says Sisters, and I've been told by our committee that I must emphasise to you that that doesn't only mean sisters. It means sisters in solidarity to end racism and sexism. So it does mean sisters, and it means everything that we can do together, and that is internationally too. So we have our magazine and a website. We organise regular meetings, stalls, exhibitions. We're active wherever the labour movement is active. We have local organisations, and we have organisations that support us locally. Many affiliations from within the trade union movement. We have individual memberships too, and affiliations from other organisations which have similar aims. Similarly, we also affiliate with organisations that we believe are fighting very, very strongly on the things that we would stand for. So in Britain, for example, we are affiliated to the campaign against the arms trade. Mm-hmm. We're affiliated to the campaign for nuclear disarmament. Peace is the centre of our struggle, and of course all rights for women and children still. So I think those are the key things that I would want to say, except that in terms of our organisation, you can find us all over Britain. You can find us on platforms making contributions to speeches. You can find us in our trade unions. You can find us in the peace campaign. You can find us everywhere that there is activity. And we stand for everything that we stood for originally in 1952, and everything that the movement has stood for over the last 100 years. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. That was very exciting history, and thank you very much for the information. So, Theo, would you like to tell us about your organization also?
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of my organization for this opportunity, of this nice talk and communicate with you and exchange views. Allow me to start with a few words about the Federation of Women of Peace that I represent. It is a radical women's organization that was founded 45 years ago, right after the 7-year dictatorship. The women who joined then were determined to pave the way for the equality and rights of women of popular strata. We are dealing with all aspects of women's inequality. We have been in the front line of the struggle, and we collided with all the obstacles that women face in every part of their life. We fight for the satisfaction of demands related to the modern needs of women of popular strata in work, motherhood, education, free time, as well as their participation in social action according to the potentiality of the 21st century. Orgia, how the name in Greek sounds, has sealed the conquest of women in our country. An example of such conquest is the improvements in family law and the legalization of abortion. However, our associations and groups do not address all women. The bourgeois women, women executives in big companies, the so-called CEOs, do not experience women's double oppression in the same way. On top of that, they support the exploiting society. So, as you can understand, these women practically stand against us. We address the working class women, the unemployed, the self-employed, the poor, peasant women farmers, the young mothers, the female students of popular families, the pensioners, immigrants and refugees. The women of our neighborhood, our cities, our villages, and we invite them to the collective and organized struggle to claim all that they should have, but they are being deprived of by the EU and governments that serve the interests of business groups. More specifically, we fight for the right to permanent and stable work for all women with full employment and insurance rights, and a salary that will meet their needs. The full protection of motherhood by the state, the satisfaction of women's special biological needs, as well as the needs of their family, that is, children and the elderly, with 3 public social services. The creative, we also fight for the creative use of their free time according to their needs, as well as their participation in social action and trade unions. Of course, Olga could not miss dealing with the particular problems such as the violence against women expressed in various ways, the culture of drug addiction, the legalization of prostitution as a profession promoted under the veil of the so-called body self-determination. Last but not least, we have stood and are still standing in solidarity with the people and the women who suffered the attacks and blockades by the US, NATO, the EU, and every imperialist mechanism. Olga is at war against all imperialist plans that spread wars, poverty, and refugees. Our participation in the Women's International Democratic Federation, the WIDF, as coordinator of the European Bureau since 2007, serves exactly this purpose.
Okay, thank you so much. So, as you both mentioned, actually, we all know that there are several topics, a lot of topics actually of struggle for the women's struggle. So what I'm wondering here is that, so which issues of struggle, which topics of struggle do you win more women recently maybe and raise the women's struggle? And especially about this March 8th, I'm wondering if you have any particular agenda or a title for this March 8th to raise. Liz, maybe you can start again.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of this this March the 8th, of course, the issue that is on the minds of all women, and we understand this from our international work too, has been the impact of COVID pandemic on women, but perhaps more importantly, the future for women post-COVID. But before I talk just a little bit about that, I did want to say that, of course, there was a huge economic crisis brewing in 2019, these periodic crises, systemic economic crises. And without the pandemic, there was going to be a huge impact on the already disproportionately disadvantaged lives of women. But the pandemic and its mismanagement has certainly dreadfully affected women and in all aspects of their lives. So this March the 8th, the theme is definitely women during COVID and what that has exposed, and how we will go forward. In Britain, women are still in the labour market very, very concentrated in what we call the areas, the 4 C's, the lowest paid areas. That is in caring, catering, clerical, that's administration, and cleaning. There are other areas. Those areas in which women have traditionally been congregated and very, very low paid. During COVID, we noticed that the majority of those involved in childcare, the majority of those in health, the majority of those in social care are all, there are somewhere in the region of between 75% and 80% women. And it's been noted that in terms of essential carers, of which there are several million, in Britain designated as essential carers. They are amongst the lowest paid people in the country. And of the 1 million essential carers that are lowest paid, 98% are women. So it is a very, very terrible situation. Women, of course, have been, the services on which they used to rely have gone with all the cruel austerity cuts that came with right-wing governments over many years, particularly over the last decade. But women have been required to work, exposed to the virus, not properly cared for, completely double burdened at home, and the services that would have been available are just not there. And of course, during the lockdowns, exposed tremendously to a level of domestic violence that has been unprecedented for some time. And I don't think we know the beginnings of it yet. I think when we come out of lockdown, we are thinking that much, much more terrible things will be revealed. So women have at the forefront of looking after our communities, looking after people, running public services, but also bearing the brunt that this horrible right-wing government that we have is putting against them. And we always notice, of course, that Britain is basically at the is one of the most wealthy countries in the world. I think 5th or 6th most wealthy economy. The heart of imperialism. It doesn't have to be this way at all. We get a lot of support for a campaign, which again I'm going to hold up, that I shall send to you all, a charter for women. This is a charter about women in society, our demands, at work and in the labour movement. It has just been revised. It used to be a separate charter organisation that the National Assembly of Women supported. It originated with women of the left and basically has been supported by the trade union movement for many years, but it is just, and it has demand across the life of women. We crucially, of course, I'll finish here, Erin, but we crucially continue with our campaigns on peace, on equal pay, on motherhood and childcare, and on combating ideological barriers. And we also get a lot of support when we celebrate women, because it gives women confidence too. So I think I finished there.
Thank you so much, Liz. So Theo, would you like to answer that same question?
Thank you. As I have already mentioned, we deal with every aspect of the life of women of the popular strata, with all the discriminations that intensify women's inequality. We want to inspire the women we address with the values of collectivity, with a militant attitude in life, and to realize that their enemy is the business groups that gain double and triple from exploiting their labor force. OGE calls on women to take part in the struggle for a life without exploitation and oppression, for a society that will safeguard the conditions that allow women to participate in social and economic activity on an equal footing with men. So this is the driving force behind their action. The militant action of OGE meets with the action of dozens of trade unions, self-employed, agricultural and student associations. We join our forces, we articulate common demands, we take militant initiatives, like the one we took last year on the anniversary of the 8th of March, which ended up with handing in a protest resolution to the EU office in Athens. This year, we have already made arrangements with unions, associations of the self-employed, with agricultural associations, organizing our common steps. So, our campaign on the 8th of March focuses on our perception of health. Based on this perception, we seek to unfold all the aspects of women's modern needs. Our slogan is, we break the limits of the individual path, we strengthen the collective struggle of health and a life with rights. It is a slogan promoting the framework of struggle for a free public health system for all women and their families. Our emphasis is upon the fight for a primary health care system that will serve the women and children's special needs for disease prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and health promotion. Our militant initiatives spread in every city, in every neighborhood, as a continuation of our actions during the previous period. The pandemic has exposed the miserable conditions in hospitals and primary health care structures, the so-called health centers here in Greece. Our initiatives reveal the cause of the enormous shortcomings which lie neither in the emergency of the current situation nor in the government officials' incompetence. The reason lies in the EU and the government policies that consider our and our families' health on one hand as a cost for the state and on the other hand as a benefit for business groups operating in the field of health. For them, health is a field for profitable businesses, and the pandemic is another golden opportunity for more profit. So, more or less, this is what we organize.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Theo. So considering our actually time limit, I want to ask you my last question. So we already talked about the pandemic and the conditions in the pandemic. So we know that in these days, the ruling classes and their representatives, the governments, are putting into effect different types of bans and constraints. So, and we also know that these bans actually turned into practices for the benefit of the capitalist class and, of course, to the disadvantage of the working people's health and living conditions, as Theo mentioned right now. So, I'm wondering, how did you plan, or how are you planning your activities in these circumstances? So maybe we can talk about that. And I'm going to ask Liz to start.
Yes, well, the government's handling of the pandemic in Britain has been absolutely atrocious. Even the mass media is, which is obviously pro-government, is finding it very, very difficult to portray what is happening in a positive light. Because what has happened quite clearly is that the interests of business, the profit of the big companies, and indeed the profits per se, have been put before safety, welfare, the well-being, and the lives of working people, and as I've already said, disproportionately affecting women. Now, the actual restrictions, I'm speaking to you from in a strict lockdown at the moment, and I can tell you that I haven't been very, very far at all, apart from to have a vaccination, for many weeks. But we are operating in conditions of very strict lockdown. And of course, those conditions, as the government knew, would stop people coming onto the streets in large numbers, would stop the meetings that would ordinarily take place, would stop all those activities that even allow women to come together to support each other, to determine how they're going to campaign. But I have to say, we will never return, I think, to the way we did things before the pandemic, because we have found that use of the internet and the meetings that we're able to hold, they have been able to bring us together in a way that couldn't happen before, to bring women from remote locations into meetings, to enable women, you know, not to have to fly from one end of the country to another to attend, to spend 2 days. So we've been able to get more done, we've been able to relate to each other, and we shall harness that. We really will harness it. But I want to say to you, the biggest barrier to women coming together and perhaps to forming a mass movement that this country so badly needs for women, a really mass working class based movement. The biggest barrier is the complete ideological barrage of the ruling classes in Britain, which tell women that everything that they suffer in terms of oppression is their lot. This thing about what women must look like, what they must do, what they must say, what they must wear, what they must complain about or not complain about, and of course reproducing their role in society, which is for super exploitation. We recognise this. It is absolutely ruthless at the moment, and that is shaping views of many, many women. But we won't be defeated, but we have to combat it because it is absolutely pervasive and toxic. So that is our big challenge, but we have a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
We believe in moving forward to socialism. We believe that the ruthlessness is in part because they are not succeeding in solving their crises.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. And Liz, would you like to tell us about the circumstances during the pandemic, your activities?
Tell me.
Yo, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Look, the lockdown and the other restrictive measures, combined with the escalation of the problems of the people and the intensity of the attack against all rights of women and their families, intensifies fear and insecurity. It affects the consciousness, the attitude, and the action of our members too. It complicates the extent of our forces' mobilization. With our militant initiatives, we sought to send the message that the way out for us lies in the collective demands and the struggle, even when our mouths are covered with masks. This is our hope for a life with rights, but at the same time, this is our way to point out the real causes of female inequality. Throughout the previous period, our presence in rallies gave strength and courage to working women, to the young mothers. We have sent a message of what we call organized disobedience of the radical women's movement, as expressed by our participation in the rally of 1st of May last year, the Polytechnic School anniversary, and strike demonstration, in the action days for health, education, and transport, together with trade unions, self-employed, and farmers' unions. Our struggles won't be locked down. With or without masks, we will not stop fighting against the exploiters of our labor power and the mechanism of service. The governments, the EU and NATO, which want to incriminate our struggle in the name of violence and radicalization. By condemning radicalization, they seek to slander organized popular struggle, but also to undermine our claims. which are radical because they do not fit into a society of exploitation and oppression.
Thank you very much, Theo. Thank you. So thank you very much for your contributions. So they were really valuable for us, for Turkish working women. So I also want to express our greetings from Turkey, from the working women of Turkey to you both. So we all believe in the women, the working women's strength, and we believe in that we are going to change this establishment and found a new one. Thank you so much for your contributions again. Thanks for joining us. It was very nice to hear you and listen to you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much as well.
And solidarity with your struggle.
Yes, thank you. Sevgili SOLTV izleyicileri, bugünkü programda Yunanistan ve İngiltere'den bize katılan konuklarımızla ülkelerindeki kadın mücadelesini konuştuk, örgütlerini konuştuk. Bir sonraki programda görüşmek dileğiyle. Hoşça kalın.